Hello and welcome. My name is Caroline and today I am answering prompt 11 of the 31 Days of Tarot 2021. And the question for today is which tarot decks do you want to work with more in 2021? So it's a difficult question because I use a lot of decks. I have many decks and I usually don't use the same deck twice. I usually do not do two readings in a row with the same deck, so I rotate through my deck all the time and I use a lot of decks. But there are a few decks in my collection that I think do not get their fair share of use. And there is usually a reason why I do not use them as much as I wish. So first of all, there is this deck that is new to my collection. It arrived in 2020 and it is the Mythical Creatures Tarot by Sudio. So I had the monochrome version of this deck. I have had this monochrome version for several years and it's stunning, absolutely stunning. And I fell in love with this deck almost instantly, and I have been eagerly waiting for the watercolored version of this deck to be released all these years. But this one, even though I really find it stunning, I have not used it that much because the monochrome version is not easy on my eyes. It's not always easy to see the design at first glance. So for that reason, I have used that deck, but not extensively. And I was really waiting for the colored version, which was released in 2020. And of course I pre-ordered it. And I fell in love even more with the colored edition than I had with the previous one. I mean, I love both, but this deck is really, it took my heart. I completely fell hell over heels for this deck. It's probably the crown of my collection, at least one of the crown. I say that for several decks and most of them are Baba Studio decks actually, but I mean this one is really stunning. I really love this one. So this one I have used in 2020 and I am really eager to work more with it because it's a stunning deck. Stunning. It's Pepish deck. I don't want to say that the minors are not illustrated because they are beautifully illustrated. Look at this. I mean, the illustration is stunning. You cannot use the word unillustrated minors for this deck, but there is no scene. It's non-scenic minors. They are non-scenic. That's the proper term. So it's good if you like to read non-scenic pips, which I do. Non-scenic minors, I don't mind them. I come from the Marseille tradition, so I don't mind pipish decks. But it's not a Marseille. It's I would say it has something of a Marseille deck, and it also has something of a Rider-Waite Smith deck. It's not a mix of those two. It's not a mix of Marseille and Rider-Waite. It's a deck that takes from both traditions, and it's actually very easy to read if you have Rider-Waite Smith bases and Marseille bases. You can read it like a Marseille, but it brings something more to the table. It's more than a Marseille and more than a Rider-Waite, and it's more than just a mix of Marseille and Rider-Waite. The second deck I wish to use more in 2021 is this Marseille tarot called Le Tarot Initiatique, which is a Marseille deck with modern illustrations. Of course, not all the symbolism of the Marseille deck is inside the design because it's modern, so it's easier to use if you already know the Marseille system. But I like the design, I like the cardstock, I like the colors, and it's not that I have not used this deck enough in the past, it's just that there is so many readings to be made and so many decks to be used in each reading, so some of my decks don't get used enough just because I don't do enough readings in the year, I guess. So this one was not used last year, and I really hope it will get more used next year. So that. And the third deck is the Pagan Otherworld. And this one is same reason as the previous one, as the previous Tarot Initiatique. This Pagan Otherworld deck is beautiful and I love it. And I just didn't use it enough because I didn't have time, or it didn't show up in my rotation, or it didn't get chosen by querents enough. And I am really looking forward to use it more. This one is it's a really beautiful deck, and it's the reason I want to use it more. So beautiful. The minors are what I would call semi-scenic, in that they seem pepish at first glance, but they are not. They are actually extremely Rider-Waite-Smith minors. So this deck is not really easy to use in the Marseille system. And actually I really like this style of minors. I really like this style of minors that follow the Rider-Waite system but are semi-scenic and have a sort of pepish look at first glance. I really like that. So the three decks I've just shown are just decks I want to use more because I didn't have a chance to use them as much as I want, and I'm looking forward to using them more. But the four decks that I am showing right now, these decks I have not used as much as I wish, and there is a reason for it, and it's the same reason for the four of them, for all of these decks. And the reason is each of these decks is interesting to use with the book. So this is the Alice Tarot by Baba Sudio. This is the Andersen Tarot deck, Fairytale Tarot deck, and the Bright Idea Tarot deck. So let's start with the Bright Idea. This Bright Idea deck could be used without the book. There's no problem using this deck without the book. It's very easy to read actually. But I have not used it that much up to now, just because if I choose a deck simply for the art or style of illustration or the voice it has, there will always be other decks that I will choose over this one. But I would like to use this one more because it comes with a wonderful book called the Creative Brainstorming with the Bright Idea deck. The book is by McElroy, and McElroy has also written other books, and I have this one which is Putting the Tarot to Work. That of course can work with any deck, but it works well with this one. And the reason I have not used this deck enough yet is because I have not delved into the two books enough. So I need to find time to delve into those two books, and I know that when I will have done that, I will use this deck more, and I'm looking forward to that because there are great ideas in those two books. This deck and this book can be used by people who do not use the tarot as a divination tool or who are not at all into the occult. If you look at the deck, nothing in the illustration of the deck look very occult, and it's specifically made to be non-threatening for people who are not into the occult or not into divination, who are not comfortable or do not like or do not believe in the occult and all that kind of stuff. So these illustrations make the deck very easy to use with absolutely anybody, and it can be used completely outside of the traditional occult and divination system. It can be used for brainstorming, and it can be used in a professional environment, and for that reason I really want to delve more into this deck. And now the three decks here are, all three of them are based on a story or on tales, and for the three of them it's important to know either the story behind the deck or the tales behind the deck. So first I will start with the Alice Tarot by Baba Studio. I suppose you could use this deck if you didn't know anything about the Alice books, and it would work. But if you know the Alice books, you will get much more from this deck. I am French, and the Alice books are not that well known in French culture. They are not as well known in the French culture as they are in the English culture. I think from what I understand, in English-speaking countries, the Alice books are really, really part of the culture, and children know about these books. It is not that true for French people. We all know a little bit about the Alice books. I mean, when I say we, I mean the French people. So French people all know at least a little bit about the Alice books or about the Alice character. We know that Alice is a little girl and she fell in the rabbit hole. But apart from that, the standard French person doesn't know the Alice stories in detail. And I have read the Alice stories. Actually, when I was at university, it was part of my literature class to study the Alice books, so I have read them. But I need to refresh my memory, and I know that when I will have reread the Alice stories, and I can also use the wonderful book by Karen Mahoney, because she takes a lot of excerpts from the Alice books and she also explains them, so that would be a good base. I know that if I knew better the details of the Alice books, I would get more out of this deck than I do actually right now. So this is a deck that I use on a regular basis. I love this deck and I use it. But what I want to do is I want to reread in detail the Alice books, so I know that after that I will be able to get more from this deck. Now this little deck here is the Andersen tarot deck. the titles are in Russian, and actually I can read Russian because I took Russian in high school, so I cannot speak Russian, but I can read Russian and I can make out the titles of the cards if need be. This is a deck that is based on tales, and it's very lightweight, so I can use it as it is. You do not need to know the Andersen tales to read this deck. You can use it as a simple Rider-Waite deck. But I would like to reread all the Andersen tales because then I know I would enjoy this deck more. Right now, there are a few Andersen tales that I know the story of and I can recall very easily in my mind. So when those tales appear in the cards, I realize I can take more out of the card. But there are other cards that relate to Andersen tales that I have never read. And for that reason, I want to read them because I know then I will enjoy the deck even more, and then I will use the deck even more. So this was the Andersen Tarot deck. And my last one is the Fairytale Tarot by Karen Mahoney. So the Fairytale Tarot, this one I really wish I would use more, and as it is I don't use it enough. For this one, it's quite important to know the tale each card relates to be able to read the cards. And it's quite easy because on each of the card there is a title of the card and there is also the fairy tale it derives from. So it's easy to find which tale is linked to which card. But many of these cards, I could even say most of these cards, are taken from tales that I never heard when I was a kid. So I need to read the tales because then I will be able to use this deck more. As it is, I do not use this deck enough because I do not know all of the tales, and for that reason when I do a reading with this deck I need to use the book all the time. I need to go to the book and find the tale that is attached to the card. And the book that is written by Karen Mahoney is wonderful. It's a wonderful book, and if you use the book in conjunction with the deck, you will get beautiful readings. But the problem is, I never use when I do readings, I don't use books. My style of reading, I'm not someone who uses the book in conjunction with the deck when I do a reading. I know that some people always have the book handy when they use any given deck, and I usually don't do that. It's just a question of my personal style. But for this deck, the book is really important, and without the book I don't think you can really get everything that the deck has to give. So what I need to do is I need to read the book from cover to cover once, to at least know all the stories of all the tales, and then I know I will be able to use the deck much better, and I will get much more out of it. Okay, so thank you and bye bye.